My name is Jack Foster, and I'm 35 years old. Life has been quieter than I ever imagined since Emily passed away. It's been 4 years now, but sometimes it still feels like it just happened yesterday. I keep to the routine we built together, work at the hardware store, help Ethan with his homework, and spend the rest of the evening watching him play soccer, his one true passion. Ethan is 10 years old, and I don't think he's ever felt as alive as when he's out on the field. Whether it's practicing with his team, the Riverstone Strikers, or watching the professionals on TV, soccer is everything to him. And by extension, it became everything to me too. I didn't know much about the sport when we first started, but I learned fast. After all, it was the only thing that truly made Ethan smile these days. And as his dad, I'd do anything to keep that smile on his face. The Strikers are a big deal around here. Every year, the town's eyes are on them, hoping for another championship. And leading them is Coach Mason, a man who has become a legend in our small town. He's been coaching for over 20 years and has brought home more trophies than anyone can count. I remember hearing his name long before Ethan ever joined the team. The man is tough, no doubt about it. His methods aren't for the faint of heart. He yells, he pushes, and he expects perfection. But people put up with it because he wins. I wasn't sure what to think about him at first. After all, a good coach can be tough if it helps the team, right? But over time, I started noticing things that didn't sit right with me. He'd scream at the boys if they made mistakes, belittle them in front of their teammates, and push them beyond what seemed like reasonable limits. Some of the other parents justified it, calling it tough love, and I started to buy into that too, just wanting Ethan to fit in and do well. But deep down, something about Coach Mason's approach didn't feel right. Then, one Thursday evening, everything changed. Ethan came home from practice, and I could tell something was wrong. His usual excitement was missing. He was quieter than usual, and his face was downcast. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just tired, but when he walked into the kitchen, I saw the bruise on his cheek and the split in his lip. My heart sank, and I asked him what happened. "It's nothing, Dad," he muttered, trying to hide his face. But I could hear the tremor in his voice. He was lying, and I wasn't going to let it go. "Ethan, what happened?" I asked again, more forcefully this time. Reluctantly, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with shame, and told me everything. The story Ethan told me shattered everything I thought I knew about Coach Mason. They had been practicing a new play, something the coach had been pushing for a while. Ethan, usually reliable with his passes, had missed one, a simple pass that any of the other kids could have easily made. It wasn't the first time he'd made a mistake, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But this time, it was different. Coach Mason didn't just yell at him like I'd seen him do with other players before. No, this time, Coach Mason's rage boiled over. According to Ethan, the coach had stormed over to him, his face twisted with anger, and screamed at him in front of the whole team. He called Ethan worthless, pathetic, and a failure. Ethan told me how the coach's words stung worse than the physical hit. But it didn't stop there. The worst part was when Coach Mason grabbed Ethan by the front of his jersey and shoved him. Hard. Ethan stumbled backwards, tripping over a bench, and hit the ground with such force that his face scraped against the rough, hard-packed dirt of the dugout. It wasn't an accident. Coach Mason had shoved him with the full intent of humiliating him. I could see it all in my mind's eye. Ethan's tear-streaked face, the shock and fear in his eyes. My heart clenched as I imagined my son, hurt and alone, with no one standing up for him. I knew Ethan was too proud to show weakness, so he'd kept quiet, trying to avoid drawing attention to himself. But the shame, the confusion, and the hurt were written all over him. He didn't want to tell me what happened, afraid that it would get him kicked off the team. He begged me not to do anything, to just let it go. "Please, Dad, don't say anything. He'll make me leave the team. He'll tell everyone I'm a baby." My heart broke as I listened to Ethan beg me to stay quiet. I wanted to comfort him, tell him everything would be okay, but inside, I was burning with anger. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the television playing in the background, but I wasn't watching it. My mind kept replaying the image of Ethan's bruised face, and the weight of the coach's callousness pressed on me. I wasn't just angry at what had happened to my son. I was furious that no one else had the courage to speak up. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about all the kids Coach Mason had tormented and pushed beyond their limits in the name of toughening them up. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. But what could I do? I was just a regular guy, a mechanic, a single dad. Who would listen to me? The thought of standing up to a man with so much power in the community terrified me, but the idea of letting Ethan continue to suffer under his abuse was worse. I knew something had to change, and it had to change now. I wasn't going to let Coach Mason get away with this, not when it was my son who was suffering. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I was going to fight for Ethan and the other kids, whatever it took. The next day, I woke up with a sense of purpose that had been absent for too long. As I went through my usual morning routine, making breakfast and getting Ethan ready for school, my mind kept racing. I had to confront Coach Mason, but I also knew that wasn't going to be easy. The thought of standing up to him, a man who was so revered in our town, made my stomach churn. He had always been the one with the power, the authority. Who was I to challenge him? Just a single dad, a mechanic, no one important in the grand scheme of things. But when I looked at Ethan, I saw the fear and sadness in his eyes, and I knew I couldn't let that go. I decided to call Coach Mason, hoping to get some kind of explanation. I didn't even know what I was expecting to hear. An apology? Some kind of remorse? Of course that wasn't going to happen. But I had to try. I dialed the number and waited as the phone rang. The moment he picked up, I felt a wave of anger rush over me. His voice was casual, almost bored. "Yeah, what's up?" he answered as if nothing had happened the day before. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "This is Jack Foster, Ethan's dad," I said, my words coming out colder than I meant. "My son came home from your practice with a split lip and a bruise on his face. I want an explanation." He chuckled, a short, dismissive laugh that made my blood boil. "Oh, it's you," he said. "What, you think your son is soft?" He needed a wake-up call. He missed a pass that any of the other kids could have made. He's not getting any special treatment. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I tried to stay calm. "You shoved him. You put your hands on my son. That's not a wake-up call, that's abuse." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he spoke again, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Yeah, I shoved him. Big deal. He'll get over it. I'm toughening him up. I make winners. And if you don't like it, that's too bad." I could feel my face getting hot with rage. He had no remorse, no understanding of how wrong he was. I could hear it in his voice. He wasn't afraid of me. He wasn't afraid of anyone. He had the whole town wrapped around his finger. "You think it's okay to treat kids like that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Look," he said, brushing me off like I was nothing, "I've got parents lining up to have their kids trained by me. And you? You're just another nobody parent." He ended the call with a scoff, like he'd already won. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, feeling the weight of his words sink in. The worst part wasn't that he had shoved Ethan. It was how he dismissed it like it was nothing. Like my son's pain didn't matter. The thought that no one would listen to me because I was just a nobody hit me harder than anything. But in that moment, I realized something. Maybe I was a nobody, but I wasn't alone. I had Ethan, and I had a responsibility to stand up for him. I wasn't going to let this go. That night, I made a decision. I would call the other parents. I would find out if anyone else had seen the same thing, and if they had, I wouldn't back down. I would gather them, and together we'd make sure Coach Mason could never hurt another kid again. I didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. Ethan deserved better. They all did. I spent the next few hours pacing around the house, thinking about what I needed to do. My fingers hovered over the phone as I tried to calm my racing thoughts. I had never been the type to make waves, to speak out against authority, but something had shifted in me. I couldn't let Ethan's pain go unnoticed, and I couldn't let Coach Mason's behavior continue unchecked. I needed help, so I decided to reach out to the other parents. The first call was to James, a dad whose son, Jake, was one of the team's star players. James and I had spoken a few times at practice, but we weren't exactly close. I explained what had happened, telling him everything Ethan had shared with me. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the reluctance to get involved. "That's a tough call, Jack," he said after a long pause. Coach Mason has always been rough, but he gets results. I don't know if I can risk my kid's future over something like this. I felt my stomach drop as the words hung in the air. James wasn't the only parent who felt that way. I called a few more parents, but the responses were all the same. I understand, but Coach Mason is a winner. I know he's tough, but he means well. It's just part of the game. The excuses piled up, and I felt more isolated with each conversation. These were the same parents who had watched their kids get screamed at, humiliated, and pushed to the brink. Yet, none of them were willing to stand up to Coach Mason. Their blind loyalty to winning and their kids' success made them turn a blind eye to the abuse happening right under their noses. Just as I was about to give up, I picked up the phone and dialed Sarah, a single mom whose son, Ben, had been on the team for years. I hadn't spoken to her much outside of practice, but something about her seemed different from the others. She was calm, thoughtful, and I could tell she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. When I told her what had happened to Ethan, there was a long pause, followed by a deep sigh. I knew something wasn't right, Sarah said softly. Ben's been coming home from practice looking sick for weeks now, refusing to go some days. I thought it was just nerves, but now I see what's really going on. He's been scared of Coach Mason for a while. But he never wanted to say anything because he was worried about getting kicked off the team. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just Ethan. Ben, too, had been suffering. That moment was the turning point. For the first time, I wasn't alone. Sarah wasn't going to sit back either. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice filled with quiet determination. "First, we talk to the other parents. If they're not willing to stand up now, we're going to make them listen," I said, the anger I'd been holding in finally breaking free. "It's time for us to make a stand together." We spent the next few hours calling the other parents who we knew had kids on the team. This time, instead of just talking about what had happened to Ethan, we shared the other stories we'd heard. We didn't wait for them to give excuses. We made them see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one incident, one child. It was about a pattern of behavior that had been allowed to go on for far too long. By the end of the night, a small group of us had come together, each of us feeling the weight of what was at stake. Coach Mason had thought he was untouchable, that he could keep bullying our kids into submission. But together, we were strong. We had a plan, and it was time to put it into action. The next day, as I drove to the field with Ethan, my heart was pounding. He was quiet beside me, his eyes focused on his lap, and I could tell he was nervous. "Dad, do we have to do this?" he asked in a whisper, his voice tinged with fear. I glanced over at him, trying to keep my own resolve strong for both of us. "We do, buddy," I said, my voice steady, though inside I was feeling the weight of what we were about to do. "But I'm not doing this alone. You're not alone either." Ethan gave me a small nod, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. It was hard for him, and I knew it. It wasn't easy standing up to someone you admired, especially when they were as powerful as Coach Mason. As we arrived at the field, I could see Coach Mason already there, standing tall with his arms crossed. His smug look disappeared as he saw the group of parents approaching, Sarah, Ben's mom, and several others from our group, all walking toward him. We were united, and the coach could sense it immediately. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head as he stood there, waiting for us to approach. He still thought he could intimidate us, still thought we were just a bunch of parents who would back down the moment he raised his voice. But today, that wasn't going to happen. I took a deep breath and walked forward, Sarah beside me. As we got closer, Coach Mason put on his usual cocky grin, trying to play it off like he had the upper hand. "Well, well, well," he said with a mocking tone. "The parents finally showing up, huh? Come to apologize for your soft little ones?" His voice was dripping with arrogance, and I could feel the old anger rising in me. But I stayed calm, standing tall and facing him directly. "We're not here to apologize," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We're here to stand up for our kids. What you did to Ethan yesterday, what you've been doing to him and the other boys, was not coaching. It was abuse, and we're done letting it slide." The other parents stood behind me, silent but strong. Coach Mason's expression faltered for just a second before he tried to recover, leaning forward with a sneer. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat. "I've been coaching longer than any of you have been parents. I know what it takes to make winners. Your kids are soft, and if they don't like it, they can leave." I could see the other parents, some of whom had been too scared to speak out before, begin to stir with quiet indignation. I wasn't alone anymore. "We don't care about your championships," Sarah spoke up, her voice full of authority. "What we care about is our kids' safety and well-being, and we're not letting you treat them like this anymore." Her words were like a spark that ignited a fire in the others. One by one, the parents began to speak out, sharing their own stories of what had been happening on the field, how their kids had been humiliated, how they had been pushed to their limits, and how Coach Mason had created a toxic, abusive environment. We weren't just fighting for Ethan anymore. We were fighting for all the kids who had been too scared to say anything, for all the families who had been too intimidated to stand up. Coach Mason's smirk faltered, and for the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes. But it was too late. The parents had spoken, and the power had shifted. "You're done, Mason," I said, my voice steady and final. "The league will be hearing from us, and so will the other parents." As we turned our backs on him, I could see him standing there, a man who had once been untouchable, now completely alone. The circle of parents walked off the field together, and I could feel a weight lift off my shoulders. We had done it. We had taken a stand, not just for our kids, but for what was right. We weren't afraid anymore. The following days felt like a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened on the field, the way we'd confronted Coach Mason, and the look of disbelief in his eyes when he realized that his reign of terror had finally come to an end. But as much as I felt relieved, there was still a gnawing anxiety in the pit of my stomach. We had done the right thing, but I knew that it wasn't over. There would be fallout, and it would affect not just us, but the kids. The league's investigation into Coach Mason was swift. The complaints from all of us, combined with the detailed statements from the children, could not be ignored. Within a few days, Coach Mason was suspended from coaching the Riverstone Strikers while the league looked into the accusations. It didn't take long before the decision came down. Coach Mason was fired. The news hit the town like a bombshell. People who had once idolized him were shocked, some in denial, others quietly relieved. But it was clear that this was no small victory. The town's love affair with winning had blinded too many people for far too long. It was a bittersweet feeling. On one hand, I was proud of what we had done, of what the parents and I had accomplished. But on the other, I couldn't shake the sense of loss. For Ethan, this had been more than just about standing up for himself. This was about losing something he loved. I knew he was hurt. Even though he never spoke much about it, I could see it in the way he carried himself. Soccer had been his escape, his joy, and now, with Coach Mason gone, the team felt fractured. The kids were unsettled, unsure of what came next. There was no easy fix for this, no way to erase the fear and disappointment that had been instilled in them. But as much as I wanted to shelter Ethan from the fallout, I knew that the next step was up to us. The parents, the ones who had stood together to take down the coach, had to come together again to rebuild what had been lost. I met Sarah at a local diner a few days after Coach Mason's firing. We both knew that we had to do something. The kids needed a team, a place to heal and rediscover their love for the game. We couldn't just let them fall apart. "We can't let it end like this," Sarah said, her voice full of determination. "They deserve better than to be left in limbo. We need to give them something to look forward to." I nodded, already knowing what needed to be done. "We start a new team," I said, the words feeling like a weight lifting off my chest. "We'll build it right this time. A team based on respect, where the kids come first. We'll do it together. Parents, kids, the whole community." It wasn't going to be easy, but we couldn't just wait for the league to find another coach. The kids had lost faith in the system, and we needed to show them that soccer wasn't about fear or punishment. It was about passion, teamwork, and growth. It was about having fun, learning, and supporting each other. That night, we started planning. We called more parents, some of whom were hesitant, but many who had already seen the damage Coach Mason had done. We shared our vision for a new team, one that would put the kids first no matter what. Everyone agreed. We would build something better. We decided to name the new team Riverstone United, a symbol of how, through unity, we could rebuild what had been broken. And so, in the weeks that followed, we came together to design a new logo, fundraise, and organize the team. As I looked at the parents and kids coming together, I knew that this was more than just about soccer. This was about healing, about taking back control of our community, and about showing our kids what true strength looked like. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a coach. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of where I was standing. We weren't going to let the past define us. We were going to move forward, stronger than ever. And I was going to be there, leading the way. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The Riverstone United team quickly became more than just a group of kids coming together to play soccer. It became a symbol of everything we had fought for: respect, unity, and the chance for our children to rediscover their love for the game. We worked tirelessly, meeting with parents, organizing fundraising events, and designing uniforms. Every evening after work, I would meet Sarah and a few other parents at the local park to practice drills, refine the team's vision, and keep the kids engaged. We were building something new from the ground up, and it felt like every moment was a step toward healing. I was nervous, to be honest. I had never been a coach before, and while I had a good understanding of the game now, I wasn't sure how I'd manage to bring the team together, especially after everything they had been through. The kids had been through so much already: fear, humiliation, and uncertainty, and I knew that earning their trust wouldn't be easy. But as the first practice day approached, I could feel the energy in the air. The kids, while unsure at first, were slowly starting to believe in what we were creating. On the day of our first practice, I stood by the field, watching the kids arrive with their parents, their faces a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Ethan was with me, standing just a few feet away, looking at me like he always did, expecting, waiting. I knew this was a big moment for him, too. He was about to see the new beginning we had promised, but I also knew he was still healing, still uncertain about how things had unfolded. "Ready, Dad?" Ethan asked quietly, looking up at me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I nodded, trying to keep my nerves under control. "Ready," I said. "We're all in this together." As the kids lined up on the field, I called them over and spoke to them for the first time as their coach. "I know things have been hard," I said, my voice steady but firm. "And I know you've all been through a lot. But this team isn't just about winning games. It's about learning to support each other, respect each other, and have fun together. We're here to build something new. So let's start fresh, and let's make it the best experience we can." The kids nodded, some still unsure, but most of them seemed relieved to hear those words. They needed to know that soccer could be fun again, that it could be about teamwork, not fear. I divided them into groups and began with basic drills, simple things that would get them moving, talking, and most importantly, laughing. It was clear they were rusty, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that they were working together, that they were starting to feel the joy of the game again. At the end of the practice, I gathered them together and looked around at their faces. Some of them were smiling, some were out of breath, but all of them seemed lighter, more relaxed. Ethan was laughing with Ben, his best friend from the old team, and I felt a weight lift off my chest. This was just the beginning, but I could already see the shift in them. They were beginning to believe in the team, in each other, and in the possibility of something better. As we wrapped up, Ethan came over to me, a genuine smile on his face. "Thanks, Dad," he said. "This was fun. I think we're going to be okay." I smiled back, feeling a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. "Yeah, we are," I said. "We really are." I knew there would be challenges ahead. Building a team, especially one that had been broken and hurt, wouldn't be easy. But that day, as I watched the kids leave the field, laughing and joking with each other, I knew we were on the right path. We were healing, together, and I was ready to lead them every step of the way. It had been a few months since we started Riverstone United, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride whenever I looked at the kids on the field. The team was coming together, slowly but surely. The practices were no longer just about drills or basic soccer skills. They were about building trust, fostering a sense of community, and creating a space where the kids could rediscover their love for the game without fear. Watching them improve, not just in their soccer abilities, but in their confidence, their camaraderie, made every late night, every moment of doubt, worth it. Ethan was a different kid now. The light that had been dimmed when Coach Mason's abuse took hold was slowly starting to shine again. He was laughing more, talking to the other kids, and even encouraging them when they made mistakes. It was a relief to see him so full of life again. The transformation wasn't just in him, it was in the whole team. They were no longer just a group of kids thrown together by chance. They were a unit, a family, supporting one another through every challenge. We were nearing the end of the season, and though we weren't the most skilled team on the field, there was something special about our group. Our bond, forged through adversity, was stronger than any championship trophy could have been. Still, there was a competitive streak in all of us, and I could see it in their eyes as we prepared for the biggest game of the season. The Riverstone Strikers, our old rivals, were on the schedule. I knew this game meant a lot to the kids. They had all been on that team before, and the Strikers had always been the team to beat. But now this wasn't about proving themselves to Coach Mason, or even about beating their old teammates. It was about proving to themselves that they were capable, that they could stand tall even in the face of a challenge. I was nervous too. The old fears, the ones I had buried deep down, crept up every time I thought about it. What if they weren't ready? What if they let the pressure get to them? The morning of the game, I could feel the tension in the air. Ethan, for the first time in weeks, was quiet, his usual excitement replaced with uncertainty. I pulled him aside before the game started, trying to calm his nerves. "Hey, listen," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I don't care if we win or lose today. I care about how we play. I care about how we support each other, how we play as a team. You've already won by being here, by being a part of this." He nodded, his shoulders loosening just a little. I could see the flicker of the old Ethan coming back, and it gave me the strength I needed to face the field with confidence. When the game started, it was everything I had expected and more. The Strikers came out strong, aggressive, their players fast and skilled, but we weren't backing down. For every goal they scored, we responded with a fight of our own. It wasn't about the score anymore. It was about proving to ourselves that we belonged on that field, that we had come too far to let anything take us down. As the final whistle blew, I looked around at my team. We had lost 4-2, but the score didn't matter. The way they played, the way they fought for every ball, for each other, it was a victory in its own right. Ethan ran up to me, his face flushed with excitement. "Dad, we did it. We really did it," he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. And that, right there, was all that mattered. We had come together, built something from nothing, and found strength in each other. That day, we didn't need a trophy to prove our worth. We had already won. As the season came to a close, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Sure, we hadn't won the championship, but that wasn't what mattered anymore. It had never been about the trophy. The real victory was in the transformation I had witnessed over the past few months. The kids were no longer the frightened, uncertain group that had walked onto the field at the beginning of the season. They were a team, united, confident, and stronger than ever. They had learned to support each other, to rise after every mistake, and to play with heart, no matter the outcome. Ethan was a completely different kid now. I saw the change not just in his soccer skills, but in his entire attitude toward life. He wasn't afraid to make mistakes anymore, wasn't afraid to fail. He knew that failure was just part of the process, and it was how you got back up that mattered. He was a leader now, encouraging his teammates when they needed it, and holding his own with confidence on the field. The anxiety that had once clouded his love for the game was gone. The joy in his eyes, the pure excitement when he played, it was back, and I couldn't be more proud. But it wasn't just Ethan who had grown. As a coach, I had grown too. I had stepped into a role I never thought I would fill, never thought I was capable of, and yet here I was, standing in front of a team that had become my family. I had learned to be patient, to listen, and most importantly, to put the kids first. Coaching wasn't about winning for me anymore. It was about making sure each child felt valued and understood. It was about creating an environment where they could thrive, not just in soccer, but in life. The final game of the season had been tough, but it had also been the perfect ending. We played our hearts out, showing the strikers that we were more than just the underdogs. We were a team that could hold our own, no matter the odds. After the final whistle blew, I gathered the kids together. "We may not have won today," I said, "but you all played like champions, and that's what I'll remember. That's what you should remember too. You gave it everything, and that's all I could ever ask for." They were quiet for a moment, but then Ethan looked at me with a smile. "We're still a team, right, Dad?" he asked, his voice full of hope. I smiled back at him, my heart swelling with pride. "Always," I said. "We're always a team." As the kids began to laugh and celebrate, the sense of camaraderie between them was undeniable. They were no longer just teammates. They were friends, a family forged through the challenges they had faced together. And I knew that no matter what came next, no matter where life took them, they would always carry the lessons they had learned this season with them. And as I stood there, watching them, I realized something important. It wasn't about being the best or having the most wins. It was about the journey, the growth, and the relationships that were built along the way. This season wasn't just a success, it was the beginning of something even greater. We had built something stronger than a soccer team. We had built a community. And that was all I could ever have hoped for. As the weeks passed after the season ended, things slowly began to settle. The kids kept in touch, their bonds stronger than ever, even though practices had stopped. Ethan, who once seemed lost without soccer to anchor him, now had a new confidence that was evident in everything he did. His smile was wider, his laughter more frequent, and he no longer came home with the weight of worry hanging over him. It was as though, in rediscovering his love for the game, he had found himself again. I could see it in the way he stood taller, in the way he spoke to people, in the way he held his head high. And as a father, that meant everything. I was learning too. In the beginning, coaching had terrified me. I didn't know how to handle a team, didn't know if I was even capable of being a good coach. But as the season progressed, I realized that the kids didn't need a coach who could call every play or know every strategy. They needed someone who believed in them, someone who would show up every day, not just to teach them soccer, but to teach them that they mattered. I wasn't just a coach. I was a mentor, a father figure, a friend. And the best part, I was growing alongside them. Every practice, every challenge, every win, every loss, it had all made me a better person. I wasn't just helping them discover their potential. I was discovering mine too. One afternoon, after practice, Ethan and I walked home together. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, and I could hear his voice, light and carefree, as he chattered about a new move he had learned. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't worried about what came next. I wasn't thinking about the next game, the next challenge, or the next obstacle. I was living in the moment, appreciating the simple joys of having Ethan by my side, of knowing that we had made it through the toughest times and come out stronger for it. "Do you think we'll win next season?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide with excitement. I smiled down at him. "Does it matter?" I asked, knowing the answer already. "Winning is great, but it's not everything. What matters is how we play, how we support each other. If we do that, we've already won." Ethan looked up at me, a thoughtful expression on his face, and then nodded. "Yeah, I think you're right." It was moments like these that reminded me just how much had changed, how far we had come. From the moment I had picked up the phone to call Coach Mason, from the moment we decided to take a stand, everything had shifted. We weren't just rebuilding a team. We were rebuilding ourselves. And as much as I had hoped to help Ethan through his struggles, he had helped me just as much, reminding me what truly mattered. And as we walked home together, side by side, I realized that the journey wasn't over. The lessons we had learned, the bonds we had formed, would carry us forward into whatever came next. We had a future ahead of us, one built on respect, trust, and love. And no matter what, I knew we'd always have each other. A few months after the season ended, things had settled into a new kind of normal. Riverstone United wasn't just a team anymore. It had become a part of the community. The kids were all still in touch, hanging out after school, playing pickup games, supporting each other in ways I hadn't seen before. It was incredible to watch them grow, not just as players, but as people. Ethan was thriving, and every day I saw more of the boy I'd been so afraid I'd lost. The anxiety, the self-doubt, the fear he'd carried, those were gone now. He was confident, happy, and had an entire team of friends who would have his back no matter what. The real test, though, came when the next season started. The excitement that had built up over the summer quickly turned into nerves. Our team wasn't as skilled as some of the others, and there was always that little voice in my head reminding me that maybe we weren't ready to take on the more established teams. But I pushed that aside. We weren't here to compete with anyone else. We were here to compete with ourselves, to show the kids that they didn't need to win to be proud of their effort. They just needed to give it everything they had. The first few games were tough. We didn't win, but we didn't give up either. I saw something that made me prouder than any trophy ever could. After every game, win or lose, the kids huddled together, giving high fives and cheers. They supported each other, and that was what mattered. It wasn't the score that defined us. It was the way we played, the way we never stopped fighting for each other. I remember one game in particular. We were down by 2 goals in the second half. It seemed like the game was slipping away from us, but the kids kept pushing forward. Ethan, usually reserved, took charge on the field, encouraging his teammates and leading by example. With just a few minutes left, we scored a goal. The crowd, what little there was, went wild. And then, in the dying moments of the game, we scored again, tying it up. The final whistle blew, and it ended in a draw, but I've never been prouder of any team I've coached. The kids were elated. As we walked off the field together, Ethan looked up at me, grinning. "See, Dad? We didn't give up. We never do." I pulled him into a side hug, feeling a lump form in my throat. "That's right, buddy. We never do." It was moments like these that made everything worthwhile. We weren't winning championships, but we were winning in the most important way, by building a team, by teaching our kids that the real victory was in how they played, how they supported each other, and how they showed up every day, no matter what. As the season went on, things continued to improve. We weren't the best team on the field, but we were the team with the most heart. And for the first time in a long time, I could say that I wasn't just a coach. I was part of something bigger. I was part of a community that valued each other, that knew that the true measure of success wasn't the scoreboard, but the bonds we formed along the way. And as I watched the kids, my heart full of pride, I knew that no matter what the future held, we had already won. Life is full of challenges, and it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of success or perfection. But the true measure of success isn't in winning every battle. It's in how we show up for ourselves and for others. The most important lessons I've learned come from the moments when things don't go as planned, when we face adversity and push through. Life is about resilience, not just about triumphs. It's about getting back up when you fall, learning from your mistakes, and supporting those around you. Building meaningful relationships and staying true to your values is what matters most. Sometimes the greatest victories are in how we treat others, with kindness, respect, and compassion. And perhaps most importantly, never underestimate the power of unity. Surround yourself with people who uplift you and always be there for them in return. Whether you're in a team or in life, your strength lies in how you rise together. Life won't always be easy, but if you keep your heart open and your mind focused on what really matters, growth, connection, and perseverance, you'll find that you're never alone in facing life's challenges.